How we doing?
Dr. Gallo, what's going on, man? How are you?
Good, good, good. Can you hear me okay? Everything look good on your end?
I can. Can you hear me?
I can. I can. Good to see you,
Yes.
man.
Likewise. Likewise. Tell you what, let me just admit everyone here. I am excited to be able to have you on our training. This is going to be pretty cool. We had over 300 docs register for it. And the good news, I don't know how many will join us, but we'll send it out as the replay as well. So good stuff.
Awesome. Let's do it. Let's rock and roll.
Yeah, let's rock it. Your day going well?
It is. Yeah. Been back to back and running and gunning, man. How about you?
Okay, yeah, very productive. Very productive. So, all right. Well, hey guys, thanks for joining us. We are excited to share with you some interesting and amazing strategies that I know are going to change your life for the better. I'm going to give kind of a informal bio of how I know Dr. Gala, and then I'll read his formal bio. But for the longest time, I've heard Dr. Gala's name pop up in certain circles, and we do run in high-level mastermind groups that we probably have a lot of mutual friends, and I just keep saying his name over and over and over. And it wasn't until about a year ago where I really started to tune in to a lot of his content. And then some of that content, as he was publishing it even on TikTok, was about tax savings and like just these really innovative strategies that I had never heard of, that I'm like, my gosh, I like the way this guy speaks. I need to know more about what he's talking about. And so I just resonated with the message. And plus, throughout that time, being friends on Facebook, gotten to know him a little bit about what he stands for. And I just think this is a really good fit for our community. And so I myself have learned a lot from this gentleman, but let me actually give you the formal bio, because his journey is pretty fascinating to where how he came to where he is. So he went into natural healthcare to save his mom's life initially after she was facing a debilitating condition. Doctors claim that would have her in a wheelchair forever, basically. Now he oversees 50,000 yearly patient interactions in his clinics. As an entrepreneur at heart, he mentors business owners and leaders on how to grow and scale their businesses. He's helped entrepreneurs save millions in taxes and works with top financial advisors, helping these business owners reduce tax liability by up to 96% every year, keeping their money completely liquid. Now, one of the things that I learned early on, and even in my naivety when I got started in business, I realized it wasn't about how much money that we made, it's how much money we actually keep. And until you start making a good bit of money, you don't realize how much you're going to be taxed. And I'm always looking for ways to legally reduce my tax liability and not tip the IRS. So again, I couldn't think of a better guest to have on this broadcast today. So Dr. Gala, thanks again for taking the time out and joining me.
Absolutely, man. This is great. Thanks for having me. I'm glad to be here. Looking forward to rocking and rolling. And yeah, I'm happy to keep this as loose as works for people. So if people have questions, feel free to throw it in the chat. We can get it handled on the fly, if not towards the end. And I'll say this, that one of my big promises is that hopefully by the end of today's workshop, that you have a clear game plan of how to reduce and eliminate your taxes and keep your money completely liquid through a variety of different methods that we're going to be talking about. So if you love paying taxes, then I would say you probably could just jump off now. If you prefer to keep more of your money and pay less in taxes and keep more of your money, then I think you're probably in the right place. So yeah, I guess with that, how does it work for you? Do you want me to go ahead and dive on in? Because if so,
yeah, absolutely. And it's just to set the stage, with the what we put on the landing page, how to turn 10K into 100K tax free. Doc's going to show us how to add 54% more revenue in 7 days or less, how to never pay taxes again and keep your money completely liquid, and creating 1 million tax-free yearly passive income with a 40-hour investment. He's doing some amazing things with his Guardians group. So yeah, take it away, Doc. It's all you.
Awesome. So the first thing I would suggest is that people write down, I would say, the rule of 6. And if you're taking notes, I would put that down. So the rule of 6, what does that mean? The rule of 6 typically means that for every dollar that you save in taxes, that's the equivalent of $6 of top line revenue, assuming a 25% profit margin and a 35% tax bracket. So obviously your number may be a little bit more, maybe a little bit less than that. But I share that because think about how much money that that you pay in taxes. And I would just say this, I agree with what you said before, Matt, and that is, I don't really care how much money you make. I care how much money that you're able to keep. So I would say this, maybe in the chat box, just throw in there, how much are you right now currently paying in taxes? And if it's zero, great, that's wonderful. If it's 100K, if it's a million, whatever it is, throw it in there, because that will help direct the conversation about which types of strategies that I'll be sharing with you guys. So if you just want to throw in a number of what you're paying in taxes, that'll help me know where to kind of focus some of the strategies and some of the things that we're talking about.
Got 25K.
So, 25K in there. Bradley, thank you for that. So what I would say on that is 25K. Awesome. So the reason that I share that is because if we understand the rule of 6, a lot of people think about taxes and we think, okay, I hate taxes. I just give my number to my CPA and they kind of do the thing with it, which is fine. That's great. But we abdicate a lot of our ability to save and make money. And what happens is when we're thinking of top line revenue, like let's say I just see a handful of people doing 25K. Let's just use that for a second. So if we have 25K times 6, if we can save you 25,000 in taxes, that's arguably the same as adding 150,000 of top line revenue. So my question would be, if you could save $150,000 in top line revenue, would that be exciting if you could make $150,000 of top line revenue, would that get you, would you be excited about that? Well, yeah, but probably not as excited about saving $25,000 on your taxes. So I share the rule of 6 to get ourselves in the right framework so that we are thinking appropriately about some of these things that I'm going to be sharing or talking about that some people may say, oh gosh, I don't know about that. That seems too hard, or the documentation, whatever the case is, because for every dollar you save in taxes, it's a multiple of top line revenue. And the thing that I think is really unfair is that if you make money, you owe the government. If you don't make money, the government doesn't pay you. And so it's this one-way street. So that's why I say as much money as you can keep, in your pocket, the better. So, look, I'm looking at the bullet points because I want to make sure that I weave these in appropriately. So there's a handful of things I'd also recommend that you write down if you're taking notes. One is the VOD, which stands for value of debt. And the other is CFA, or cash flow arbitrage. And I'll come back to those terms in a minute, but it's critical to understand that we think like the wealthy, in that how many people have ever heard that, Jeff Bezos, Elon Musk, Richard Branson, Donald Trump, whatever, don't pay taxes, or they pay very little in taxes, right? We all have heard that. But now let me see, throw in the chat there, how many hours have you spent researching how to pay little in taxes, or how many hours do you spend, let's say a week, really understanding the tax code? I've done webinars on here before where it's like 1 hour, 0 hours. I had one gal one time, she put on there -2 hours. I said, how do you spend -2 hours a week on understanding taxes? She said, I intentionally try to avoid this because I hate it so much. I actually put brain power into trying to avoid it. So one person said, yes, very few. Yes, 1 to 2 hours a week. Okay. So here's the things. Tim, avoid it also. Yeah, Adrian, awesome. So here's the thing, you guys. It's no secret that wealthy people don't pay taxes. But yet very few of us have taken the time to really understand or to learn this. I got a letter from my CPA that said I owed $250,000 in taxes, but I only had $30,000 in the bank account. And I called him up. I said, there's got to be something wrong here. And he's like, well, death and taxes. And I thought, well, you know what? There's a phrase I like to use, and it's look at what the masses are doing and do the opposite. Because most of us are wrong about most things most of the time. And that includes myself. The average person is overweight or obese. The average person is on one or more medications. The average person doesn't have more than, I think, $5,000 in their savings account. The average person will work until they're 65 or 70 to actually retire. I don't want to be average. So if we listen to average advice, we're going to get average results. So that's why I go and say, okay, so how do these people reduce taxes? So I said someone here don't know a lot about how to not pay taxes, some, but not much. 0. Okay. Awesome. And I really appreciate the feedback in there, guys, because that will help me understand which way to take the conversation. So I'm going to go through a handful of low hanging fruit, and then we can dive into bigger ones. So the one thing, how many of you yeah, so I'm gonna start on some low hanging fruit, and then we'll get into some more advanced ones. So in the chapter there, how many people have either bought real estate? So put in there if you bought real estate in the last year, or if you have kids over the age of 7, or if you have a business or an LLC or an S corp. Go ahead and just throw in a chat and say like, yes, I bought real estate. Yes, I have kids. Just like throw in, that way I can get to know a little bit of the things that you guys are already doing in there. How many, and Matthew, have you guys already gone over, like, have you done workshops before in terms, because I don't want to belabor points if you've already hit it on like accelerated depreciation, cost segregation.
No. Yeah, that's all you.
Okay, cool. So one of the things, I'm going to share a story with you about how the wealthy use what's called cash flow arbitrage to not only eliminate their taxes, but also grow massive amounts of wealth tax-free. The wealthy understand this. They make one shift in their mindset. Instead of taking their money and buying things, they take their money and they buy what I call magic piggy banks. So instead of taking their money and buying things, they take their money and they buy assets that are deductible, you can borrow against, and they have an intrinsic value to them. So again, so taking your money and instead of buying things with your money, you buy an asset, or what I like to call a magic piggy bank, which is something you can deduct on your taxes, you can borrow against, and has intrinsic value. Real estate. Let's just talk about real estate for a second. About 6-7 years ago, I bought a piece of real estate. It was $1.6 million, and I bought it for $10,000. And it cash flowed around $2,000 a month. And I used that money actually to buy a Tesla. So I kind of joke and say I got a free Tesla out of the deal. But how did I do that? I went to the bank and I said, I want to buy this piece of real estate. Will you allow for the seller to carry the down payment? And the lender said, yeah, but we want to be in first position. I said, okay. I went back to the seller and I said, so I know that you've been wanting to sell this property for about 6 months and it hasn't sold, right? Right. And I know that you're four kind of older investors and you guys want to get this off your books for your kids, right? Yeah. I said, I'll tell you what, I will give you your price. You give me my terms. So what do you mean? I said, I will give you $1.65 million. And I want to, so I'm going to give you full price, but I want the bank to give you 75% right now. And then I want you to carry 25% as the down payment. And I'll pay you off in 5 years. They thought about it. They said, great, we'll do it. So I showed up to closing with a check for $10,000 and I actually got like $237 back. So I actually only paid like $9,600-$700. So I paid like 0.05% down payment for a $1.6 million building. So I got a free building out of it. Plus I got a free Tesla out of it. And it's been cash flowing $2,000 to $4,000 every month since. But here's the other thing. When you look at accelerated depreciation, 1.6 million, I'm just going to use a 30% depreciation. I was able to do a write-off of $480,000 on my taxes.
Wow.
Through accelerated depreciation. So I took $10,000. I bought a $1.6 million asset. I lowered my tax bill by about $480,000. Plus I get $2,000 a month. How many people like that kind of stuff? Because, and if you think, oh, well, you know, Thaddeus, that's kind of a fluke, whatever. I've done this year after year after year. Last May, this time, actually, I think about 3 days ago, last May, I bought another piece of property. And I'm not going to just talk about real estate the entire time here, but I'm just using this as an example. Is it okay if I share my screen here?
Sure.
Can you guys see that there?
Mm-hmm.
Can you guys see a picture of a house there?
Yes.
Okay. So this is a brand. So you may think, oh, well, Thaddeus, this is a fluke, right? I could go through countless, well, not countless, but I could go through many pieces of real estate that I've done this similar with. Here's a piece of real estate that I bought this time last year, a brand new house, $900,000. I put 10% down. Where did I get that 10%? Well, I just refinanced that $1.6 million building that I bought for 10 grand. I just refinanced it and pulled out about $400,000 because it's now worth about 2.5 million. So I pulled about $400,000 or $500,000 out of that property. 100,000 of that I used for this down payment. Now, here's the thing, you guys. Are loans taxed or are loans tax free? Go ahead and put in the chat box there. Are loans taxed or are loans tax free? Why are loans? So I see a few people putting their loans tax free. Why are loans tax free? So this is where we get into the value of debt, or VOD. In that, loans are tax free. Why? Because you ultimately need to pay them back. You can't be taxed on money you borrow because there is no income on a loan. You don't claim it on your W-2. There's no income, you have to pay it back. Agreed. So here's the thing. Wealthy people understand this. So I just bought a piece of real estate for $10,000 that was worth 1.6. Now it's worth 2.5. I borrowed out around $400,000 of it. Let's just call it 400,000 for easy placeholder. I saved and I used 100,000 of, now that 400,000 is a 100% tax free. I used 100,000 of that to go buy this property here. I used 10% down. So I paid $90,000 down, $90 to $100,000 down. This property is brand new, never lived in, for 900,000. It's already worth a little over 1 million. So the 90,000 that I put in, I've doubled it in 1 year. And if I go refinance this, I mean, any money I pull out is 100% tax free. So this is how this is how the wealthy understand how to generate money out of thin air, just by understanding the money game and eliminating their taxes. And this is right next to Jacksonville, Oregon, which is a really cute, historic little town. It's basically where everyone in California that retires, they sell a $3-4 million home and they come up here to buy a $1 million home. That's twice the home, and they still have a couple million in their pocket. So I'm going to blend a couple terms here. I was able to leverage OPM, which is, you guys, you know what the acronym OPM is? OPM stands for other people's money. So I was able to use the bank and the lender, or the bank and the borrower. I'm sorry, the bank and the seller. I used the bank and the seller to buy that $1.6 million property about 6-7 years ago. Let's just call it 6 years ago. I got a significant, let's just call it a $480,000 tax savings. So I reduced my taxes by $480,000. I only put $10,000 into the deal. $480,000 tax savings. It cash flowed $2,000 a month. So I got a free Tesla out of the deal. I just refinanced it and pulled out about $400,000. And that 400,000 is 100% tax-free money, which if we use the rule of 6 to get $400,000 in your pocket tax-free is the equivalent of having a $2.4 million business. So I got $400,000 in my pocket tax-free. I used that 100,000 of that tax-free to get this piece of property that we're looking at right now by using 10% down on a $900,000 owner carry. That money has already doubled in 1 year. So I'm going to pause right there because that's a lot that I just threw at you guys of how I've just generated pretty much on autopilot in the background, hundreds of thousands of dollars of tax savings and hundreds of thousands of dollars in my pocket, 100% tax-free. And if you have any questions, feel free to write it down in there. But this is how you create golden geese that lay golden eggs, and then your golden eggs start hatching and laying more golden geese. And before you know it, you have a flock that's taking over the world. And the wealthy people understand this, is they put their money into assets, which I like to call magic piggy banks or cash flow arbitrage, which is, again, something that's deductible, something that you can borrow against, and has intrinsic value. So obviously, I put money into the real estate, which has accelerated depreciation, so it has a huge deduction. I can borrow against it because whenever you borrow, loans are tax-free. And here's the other thing, is that it has intrinsic value. It's a tangible asset. It produces monthly cash flow, etc. Now, a lot of people think, but Thaddeus, I have all these loans. Well, that's why I talked about value of debt, VOD, and that is this. Time makes all debt obsolete. If you don't believe me, go back and look at historical inflation rates and the value of the dollar over the last 50 to 100 years. The value of the dollar has dropped. I believe in the last 100 years, the dollar has lost 97% of its purchasing power. As long as we have the Federal Reserve and as long as we have government playing with fiat money and we have inflation, the value of debt stands to reason. And that's the time value of money, meaning that anything you can invest in now that's going to match or beat appreciate and inflation that you can borrow against, you will win, because you get to use more powerful dollars today, and you get to pay them off with weaker dollars down the road. I'm remodeling an 1865 ranch house, and I found a match booklet in the house, and it was the match booklet. You guys remember those little flip match booklets that you'd see like at casinos or other places or hotels? And when you flipped it open, there was a little advertisement from a bank in there. And the bank said, if you need cash quick, give us a call. We can do $25 loans, and the loan is only 3 cents. You know, you're only paying 3 cents in interest. And I'm sitting here thinking, a $25 loan? And you have to think, at the time, I have no doubt that $25 was a big deal. Because when you think about it, time makes all debt obsolete. And let's say that you borrowed $100,000 from a loan today on a property. That $100,000 is going to be tax free. And you would think, but gosh, Thaddeus, then I have a $100,000 loan. But let's say, for instance, let's pretend that you had 50 years to pay that off, and you only had to pay interest only on it. And your interest was, let's just say the interest was 0%. Would you borrow $100,000 that you had 50 years to pay off, and all you had to do is pay interest only, and the interest rate was 0%? Well, of course, because that $100,000 50 years from now, even if you put it in real estate, and even if it grew 3 to 4%, is going to be worth multiples years from now. So anytime you look at debt, you get the power of the dollar today, and you get to pay it off with cheaper dollars down the road. Because $100,000 today in debt, and yes, $100,000 is a fair amount of money, but $100,000, let's just say 10 years from now, it's not going to be anywhere close to $100,000 today. So I'm going to pause there for a second, because I've thrown a lot at you guys in terms of long time frame preference of thinking, the value of debt, cash flow arbitrage, putting your money into, and here's the thing, when you put your money into assets, this is what the wealthy people know. Instead of taking their money and putting it and buying things, they take their money, they buy assets, and then they borrow against those assets to buy their things. It's that one critical step in between there. Again, and I'm going to say this probably 5 or 6 more times, so it's absolutely drilled into your head, and you teach your kids this. Instead of taking your money and buying things, and I'm going to say it, and excuse my language, instead of taking your money and just buying shit, take your money and go buy assets, and then use your money to go buy bullshit. And when I say that, I mean going to the movies or doing whatever the case is, because that intermediate vehicle is what the wealthy understand. But most people don't have the patience. Most people don't have the long time frame preference of thinking to take that step, because they want things right now. So they skip a step. And then what happens is they skip a step, and then before you know it, they're 65 and they're still working 9 to 5, and they're wondering why they don't have any money. Is because they didn't take that pause to develop their assets in their portfolio. I think you should be buying at least $1 million every single year in real estate or in assets. Why? Because when you look at the rule of 10, the rule of 10 states that in 10 years, when you buy a piece of real estate, let's say you buy a piece of real estate for $1 million, in 10 years, when you look at how much that's going to appreciate, and even if we use let's just say a historical 4% inflation, or I'm sorry, appreciation. If we assume a 4% historical appreciation and principal reduction by paying down the mortgage, the rule of 10 states that with those two diverging exponential lines, in 10 years, we have the original purchase price in equity. Said another way, if you buy $1 million property and you let it marinate for 10 years, you will have $1 million of equity in the property in just 10 years. Most people were trained to think that, oh, well, I'll have $1 million once it's paid off in 30 years. That's not the case, because they're not taking into account appreciation and they're not taking into account principal reduction. They're only thinking about, oh, I have a 30-year loan. I just this last summer or before last summer, let me back up. About this time last year, I pulled out $1.7 million out of my portfolio, out of some properties that I've only had for a few years. And that 1.7 million that I pulled out was 100% tax-free. So here's the thing. Most people want instant gratification. And that's why most people don't take the time to build up their assets. So someone asked here, outside of real estate properties, what other assets can you buy with this technique? Great question. I've done this with X-ray machines. I've done this with memberships to mastermind groups. I've done this with farm equipment. You can do this with virtually anything that you can borrow against. So for instance, I bought an X-ray machine when I first opened up my first clinic for $60,000. I think it was like $60,000, $70,000. It's kind of irrelevant, but it's around there. So I bought an X-ray machine. I paid cash for it. And then I went back to an equipment financer and I said, hey, can you guys refinance my X-ray machine for me? And they said, yeah. So what they did was they gave me a loan, which that loan now is tax-free. So again, look at this. With Section 179, I was able to completely write off the X-ray machine. So I was able to get, let's just call it a $70,000 tax write-off. I was able to borrow against it. I was able to get my money back. And the X-ray machine had intrinsic value. It could obviously help find issues with patients, which meant revenue for the clinic. So that's what's called cash flow arbitrage, or another term would be a magic piggy bank. Magic piggy banks allow for cash flow arbitrage, where you're just arbitraging the cash flow. Because some people would say, oh, well, I have this loan on this. I have a loan on this X-ray machine, but gosh, Thaddeus, I have DRD, I have Dave Ramsey disease. All debt is bad. They're still infected with this horrible sickness. And what happens is they think all debt is bad, and they don't realize, well, I can borrow against my X-ray machine and it's producing revenue because it's treating patients. Now, if I bought an X-ray machine and I just put it in storage, obviously that's bad debt. That's not a good thing to do. But now watch this. Watch this. Remember that property that I bought for $1.6 million? I saved like $480,000 on my taxes. So I turned $10,000 into a $480,000 tax savings, which, when we use the rule of 6, that's the equivalent of a $2.8 million business. So I turned $10,000 into a $2.8 million business. Because you'd have to have a $2.8 million business on average, if you had a 25% margin and a 35% tax bracket, to actually end up with $480,000 in your pocket. So I turned $10,000 into $2.8 million. I feel like that should be a book title now. I turned $10,000 into $2.8 million, and I got a free Tesla out of it. That'd be the subtitle. And I got a free Tesla, and the sellers threw in a free Tesla. So I got that building. But here's the thing: when I took that money back out, when I refinanced it 5-6 years later, that money was 100% tax-free. But wait, there's more. I took that money and I went and bought this other property that I just showed you, that brand new one, for $900,000. Now what do I get? Now I get to do accelerated depreciation on that one. So I'm generating significant tax losses with free money that's tax-free because I'm borrowing against it on the properties. So you can do this with an X-ray machine. So that's where you get it. So you guys, if you understand this, this is where you get to each have your cake and eat it too. And you get to eat the entire cake factory. And you get stock in the cake company, and they just give you the entire company when, like, at the end of the day, like, that you are making money out of thin air by doing this, and you're making tax-free money out of thin air, and you're taking that tax-free money and you're building and growing more tax-free things from it. Because watch this. Let's say that I'm going to use a round number. Let's say that I'm a business owner, and let's say I have $100,000 of let's say my business did $1 million, but my net income is $100,000. So I'm going to pay taxes on $100,000 unless I do something before the end of the year. Well, you know what? I've always wanted a new X-ray machine. So I take that $100,000 and I go buy a new X-ray machine for $100,000. I've just zeroed out my taxes, right? Great. Awesome. Now I go back to the equipment financer and I say, hey, you know what? I really could use that money. Can I have $100,000? Great. They give you a loan on the X-ray machine. What happens now if you take that $100,000 and you go, let's say you go hire a new doctor for $100,000? What does that do to your taxable income? You're going to lower it by another 100,000. So you can do this over and over and over again. You can use the same money over and over. And that's understanding cash flow arbitrage and the magic piggy bank, other people's money, OPM, VOD, or the value of debt, the rule of 6, and the rule of 10. So when you understand these things, you can start to build this structure of how the wealthy create assets and they create tax-free wealth. You look at people like Jeff Bezos and Elon Musk, they often borrow against their stock. You can borrow against your crypto. You can borrow against your real estate. You can borrow against an X-ray machine. You can finance things like with the Guardians. We have an option where people can join for $100,000 and they can essentially finance their membership. So they get a write off their membership for 100 grand. And then we give them a line of credit for 100 grand. So they're essentially financing their membership. So there's essentially infinite ways that you can do this. Now, a lot of people say, well, Thaddeus, I just don't like a lot of debt. Well, that's fine, but understand that's average thinking. Wealthy people understand the value of debt. Look at all of these companies that have huge cash reserves. They still borrow money. So wealthy people understand this. And here's the thing. I've never had a problem getting a loan by zeroing out my income. Why? Because there's a thing, write this down. There's a thing called add backs. If you aren't familiar with add backs, write that down. Add backs is the way that you get to kind of play the game between the IRS and your lender, meaning that you can go to the IRS and obviously making sure you're doing everything legitimate and compliant and document, et cetera, but you have everything documented that shows this, right? Like, I'm going to give you a perfect example of how you can have your cake and eat it too with the IRS in your bank. And there's nothing illegal with this. This is completely fine. In that, think about this example. When I was first starting my clinics, I didn't have to do any creative ways to like go out and buy real estate or do other things to reduce my taxes because I had so many expenses that I was often zeroing out my taxes already. But let's just say, for instance, I bought that X-ray machine. Let's just call it 70 grand. I bought that X-ray machine, right? So that's going to reduce my taxable income. So the IRS is looking at this and saying, yeah, you bought an X-ray machine, you got to write that off. We're going to zero out your income. Now, when you go to your local community bank, they often allow things called add backs. So when I went to buy a property, I went in and I said, well, I've had a lot of first startup expenses that aren't going to happen again. They said, well, what do you mean? I said, well, look, I bought all of these exam tables. I bought this X-ray machine. I bought all this stuff. I bought all this furniture, this art, blah, blah. I had to outfit my first clinic, blah, 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 blah. Well, can we both agree that I'm likely not going to buy another X-ray machine every single year? I'm not going to have to buy new exam tables every single year. And the lender said, yeah, that makes sense. So you know what? We're going to add that back into your income when we're counting your debt to income ratio. So this is an example of where for the IRS, you can show it as a loss or you can deduct it. But on the bank, they'll actually, when they're calculating your income, they'll count it for you. So, and there's dozens of other ways that you can do it. So someone just said, Aaron said, so it's called an add back. So add ADD and then back BACK. I know I kind of said it quickly there, so it sounded like something else, but it's an add back.
Depreciation is a add back as well, isn't it?
What's that?
Depreciation is an add back as well.
And that's when we talk about EBITDA, right? So it's earnings. Or what's the acronym? But it includes before depreciation and interest, et cetera, because we know that those things actually should be counting towards the net income. Let me see if I can get some of these questions here. I've listened to the owner of a big company talk about taxes. He has said that I work with 3 CPA firms and each gives 3 different answers. Yep, you're absolutely right. They did a study years ago where they took the proverbial shoebox of receipts and they sent it to like 10 different CPAs, and all 10 different CPAs, it came up with 10 different returns. They did the same thing with some of the softwares out there. I think they took like 7 different softwares of tax filing softwares, and they plugged all the stuff in, and they got all different numbers of taxes owed, everything. So it's all over the board, right? It's absolutely ridiculous. You'd think it'd just be a real easy, straightforward thing, but it's not. It's how it's classified, where it's put in, all this kind of different stuff. And things change every year, right? Like right now, I think it's still this year, at least last year, I believe it was, you can write off meals 100% versus meals used to be 50%, because the government realized that they just destroyed businesses and restaurants. It's just crazy how the government manipulates, how they have this unilateral ability to just manipulate the tax code however they want. We're going to shut down businesses because we think that that's what we should do, as opposed to just letting people do what they want, how they want. I always think you should just put a sign on the door, say, we require masks. We don't. If you want to enter at your own risk, do or don't, or go someplace that does require masks or don't require masks. Like, let people figure it out. Anyways, the government said, we're going to shut down restaurants. And then they said, oh yeah, well, now that we've destroyed restaurants, we're going to try to boost them back up. So if you go to eat at a restaurant and it's business expense, we'll give you 100% deduction as opposed to 50%. So it's just crazy how the government just regularly manipulates how they want the economy to run. They just do whatever they want. So I would say this: if you're still paying taxes, find a new CPA. I think you need 3 people. You need a CPA, tax attorney, and like an advisor of sorts. So finding those people and finding someone that thinks outside the box and is able to do this. What if you have difficulty borrowing against a real estate asset because of the problem of debt to income ratio? Okay, so I think we already raised that. The Fed is raising the rates 7 times this year alone. Yeah, the nice thing about that is typically when the Feds raise the rates, prices stabilize or prices go down. So it ends up being about the same. And again, also, the long game always wins. Time in the market always beats trying to time the market. I had a buddy that's really big into real estate, and about 2 months before COVID hit, he messaged me. He's a mortgage broker. He said, "Hey Thaddeus, I just think there's something coming. I don't know what it is, but I'm selling a lot of my properties just to kind of keep my powder dry because I think there's going to be a big correction coming." I'm like, man, this guy's been in real estate a long time. He really knows what he's talking about. But I just didn't get around to it. I did think about selling, but my philosophy is try to never sell. I didn't sell, and thank God I didn't, because what happened to real estate over the last 2 years? It is absolutely mushroomed, right? So my buddy who sold a bunch of his properties thinking he was going to like catch the market, and all of a sudden COVID happened, which no one could see. And that's the thing. Even Warren Buffett and Charlie Munger say, we have no idea whether the market's going to go up, down, or sideways. Anyone that thinks that they know is lying. But we know that time cures all. Let's see here. I know that some people, is it okay? I know some people, if they want to work, Matt, is it okay if people that want to, I can put a link in there for people that want to work or have questions about our team directly?
Yeah, absolutely.
People want to jump off.
Absolutely.
So for those of you that do, if you guys do want to work with us, and I'll get through the rest of these questions here. What we do is for people that are interested, what we do is we do a 1-hour call with people. It's called a MAP, and it stands for MAP. And what we do is we say, if we can't get you $10,000 to $30,000 of tax savings in 1 hour, we give you a 100% refund. So it's $7,500, and that's to map out your next 1 to 5 years of working towards reducing and eliminating taxes through assets, cash flow arbitrage, value of debt, other people's money, etc. So it's $7,500. And in that in the first hour, we'll work with you for a couple hours if you need it. Usually it gets done in the first call. But if in that first hour, you don't get off that first call and you don't see a clear path to how you're going to immediately save $10,000 to $30,000, we give you a 100% refund. And in addition to that, we map out your next 1 to 5 years of what to be doing. So the next 5 years, you can generate significant wealth that's tax-free, whether it be through real estate, crypto, business building, whatever it is that you're excited about. That's what will help build for you. So if you guys are interested, or if you have to jump off, feel free to grab that link, and we can get you squared away. And if we jump on the call and after we do do the whole map and we can't help you, like I said, we'll give you a full refund. So that way, and we'll try to point you in a good direction. So at least that way you don't leave empty-handed. All right. What other questions do you guys do? Oh, so it looks like Tim just asked, do you only do the map or also CPA? So Tim, great question. We have a handful of CPA firms that we work with and that we co-manage clients with, depending on different strategies and where people are at. So we can definitely make a referral if you'd like. So if you want, we can make a referral as well. But usually what we do is we like to do the map first. So that way we know where you're at dollar wise, range wise, business, where you see yourself the next months, years, decades. So that way we can put you with the right people, because there's some more advanced wealth planning people I might put, bigger businesses with. And yeah, so just to get the best game plan overall. Good question. Do you have recommendations for CPAs and tax advisors? I think that's called, I think if I'm getting the name right, Saprit. Yeah, we do. Yeah, I don't make blanket referrals typically anymore, unless we've had an ability to talk with somebody. If you don't want to do a map, you just maybe message me on social media and I can try to make an introduction. If you don't want to go through a map, I can make an introduction. Alexander said, would this work for a Canadian non-US citizen but resides in the US? Now I have an LLC. I would say yes, with the asterisk of I'd need to know more about your situation. Yeah, I'd want to know more about where the income is coming from, where you're working with, because we do have some Canadian, some CPAs in Canada that we work with as well, that we can refer you to. Yeah, good question, Alexander. Let's see here. Do you have recommendations? I already got that one. What do I tell a finance company that I want to borrow against my medical equipment? Does this only apply when you've paid off fully? Great question, Saprit. No, you can. What I would say is whatever industry you're in. Like I have a ranch, and so I bought about $150,000 of equipment last year through an excavator, a tractor, and a handful of other things. And what I did is I just financed that through John Deere, because John Deere, they had like a zero, now supposedly legally you're not allowed to give loans less than what's called the applicable federal rate. But somehow I guess companies get away with it. Like, cause John Deere, they had like a 0% interest loan for like 5 years or something. So, so I obviously I did that because that's like free money, right? So like a tractor and an excavator, that's a magic piggy bank, and that's cash flow arbitrage. I can buy an asset, so it's deductible. I can borrow against it, and it has intrinsic value, meaning in the simplest sense, I can use the tractor to plant crops, right? Or hay or whatever. I use it for a lot of other things on the ranch, but that's again a magic piggy bank. Now, if you don't think entrepreneurially, then I would caution against a lot of these strategies, because if you're not an entrepreneur, then you think of debt as all debt is bad, and then you think of debt as being scary, and then you go into it with a scarcity mindset, and then you shrink and recoil as opposed to step into it. So there's some people that I would not recommend this for. Like if someone was just a 9-to-5er and they just had a property, I wouldn't go out, and they didn't think entrepreneurially, I might not recommend they go out and take on a bunch of debt, because they don't know how to turn those assets into things that produce revenue and money on the back end. Do you ever have the challenge with the refinance portion? Is your debt to income ever concerned? Yeah, so I would talk about add backs. I would say this. you need to call probably 20 banks to find the right lender for you. And what I mean by that is my cousin called the other day. He said, yeah, Thaddeus, I called 3 banks and none of them could give me a loan. I said, how many did you call? He said 3. I said, well, you called 17 too few. You need to call and find more banks and more lenders and more. You just need to build. How many people are married in here? How many people did you date before you got married? It's how many cars have you bought in your life before you got the car that you have now? So you have to kiss a lot of frogs sometimes to get your prince or your princess. So for me, I have a lender that's absolutely awesome. I called up my lender and I said, hey, I'd like to refinance a portion of my portfolio. And they said, great. I said, well, we can go the Fannie Freddie route. And that'll take probably 6 months. We need all this documentation. We need all your tax returns, all these things. And we just had our bookkeeper had just left because our COO didn't like her and wanted to hire a new bookkeeper. So we had a new bookkeeper in transition. So we were on an extension. So we hadn't filed taxes. And I'm like, well, I don't even have my taxes done. And she's like, oh, well, we can do an in-house program. I'm like, well, what's that entail? She's like, well, we can have everything done in 30 days. I don't need to see any of your documents. We'll just go ahead and do everything and you'll be square. It wasn't that easy, but it was basically like night and day difference because they're a smaller community bank and they've known me for years and it was in and done. And obviously I went that route. But now the downside was she said, the loans were 10 years. So in 10 years, I'm going to have to refinance them again or sell them or something, but I don't really care about that. Okay, so what do we have here? My business in the US. Yeah, Alexander. Yep, that's great. So we can use US-based CPAs. Better to buy businesses or properties? Both. Blaine, I would say whatever you're good at. Great question, Blaine. Whatever you're good at. And if you guys want to unmute, you can talk to me as well. I know you guys just love probably hearing my voice here, but I kind of get tired of it. So if you guys want to unmute and ask me a question, feel free. Looks like Lee said, what if I'm in the middle of purchasing a commercial building SBA for 4.6 million? Attorney is reviewing the PSA today. What do you think about SBA? I think the SBA can be great. It's a tool just like anything else, right? It's an X-ray. What do I think about an X-ray machine? It's a tool, but I wouldn't use an X-ray machine. If someone came in and they just had neck pain and it wasn't really, complicated. So everything is a tool, just depends on what you have going on. And you have to understand the numbers and the guts of the deal. Bradley says, generally, what kind of real estate is the best to start with? Condo, house, commercial, short-term rentals? Bradley, great question. I would start with whatever you're most comfortable with, whatever you're not going to screw up. If you're starting out, if you're brand new and you're starting out, I would probably say a 3-bedroom, 2-bath, single family. And buy it as an owner occupied and occupy it. And you get all the benefits of that. And then I think it's in 5 years, you can either refinance it, or if it's your primary residence, I believe 2 out of 5 years, you can like sell it and you don't pay capital gains. But I don't like to sell. I just like to refinance. So yeah, Bradley, I would find something, if you're starting out, if you're new in real estate, I would buy something that you're familiar with and that there's a big market for reselling. What other questions do you guys have? Let me go through our list of promises here. I want to make sure that we got all those. So how to add 54% more revenue in 7 days or less. So to summarize that bullet point, I know we talked about on the registration page, is that when we look at adding 54% revenue, if you assume that you have a 25% margin and a 35% tax bracket, if you zero out your taxes, that's typically the equivalent of adding 54% more top line revenue if you look at the rule of 6. So utilizing these principles. So what I mean by that is in the next 7 days, map out what are you going to be acquiring that's an asset that is your magic piggy bank. Is it going to be real estate? Is it going to be a business? Are you going to be buying, are you going to be joining a mastermind group and then going and getting a line of credit either from them or from the bank or somewhere else? Are you going to be buying equipment? Whatever it is, what is your magic piggy bank that you can use that, again, that can be deductible on your taxes, that you can borrow against, and has an intrinsic inherent value itself? So number two, how to never pay taxes again and keep your money completely liquid. That's where we talked about cash flow arbitrage and borrowing against assets and understanding the value of debt. Time makes debt obsolete. And that's the time value of money. And then number three, creating $1 million tax-free yearly passive income with a 40-hour investment. This is how I would do that. I would go, unless you like businesses or something else, I would go and I would do a search and talk to your realtor for owner carry properties. Find an owner carry property that you can put little to no money down on. And I would try to acquire at least $1 million a year in real estate. If you buy $1 million of real estate, obviously you get a crap ton of tax benefits from that. Plus, you got to remember the rule of 10, that in 10 years or less, you have to remember you're going to have $1 million of tax-free wealth in there. Now, if you do this every single year, if you buy $1 million every single year, then you have to think after a few years. I mean, even if if all you did was this, just take 40 hours one time a year, just take 1 week, one time a year. Obviously, realistically, it's going to be sprinkled out. But if you take 40 hours once a year and buy $1 million of real estate, just commit to that. You have to think in 10 years, you will be getting $1 million tax-free every single year for the rest of your life. Because in 10 years, you just refinance each one of those properties. You do this for the next 10 years in a row. In the background, you'll have $1 million every single year tax-free back in your pocket. Who would like to have $1 million, 100% tax-free every single year for the rest of their life? Because if you like that, then you have to invest this time and this energy into building these systems. The wealthy understand taking their money first. And instead of buying crap with their money, they take their money and they buy assets. And then they borrow against their assets. I read this article one time. I think it said Mark Zuckerberg will never pay taxes again. Why? Because or he'll never have to pay money out of his pocket for taxes, because what he was able to do is he was able to essentially any income that he had come in, he would borrow against his stock, and then he would take that money and he'd use that money to pay off his taxes. So he just had these massive loans that he was building, but what he was paying in taxes paled in comparison to where his stock and his net worth was going from other cash flow arbitrage methods he was using. I saw a comment on here. I'm probably not going to say this right. Sangwoo. If we buy $1 million property every year, won't we end up with loans after loans? Yes. That's the point. That's a feature, not a bug. Awesome. So, one other thing I was going to say, is it okay if you want, Matt, I can put a link up there for our real estate workshop if people are interested. Because I know I invariably after I do these kind of interviews or webinars, people always ask and they say, hey, how do I learn more about real estate? So I teach a workshop on real estate. It's a 2-day intensive. And my promise is that when you leave, that you'll be able to go out and acquire at least $1 million of real estate every single year with little to no money out of pocket, regardless of your credit score, regardless of money in the bank account, or regardless of your experience. Now we have a real estate beginner, or a real estate intro and a real estate advanced. You can't take the advanced real estate intensive until you've done the beginning workshop. So everyone has to go through the link that I put in there. Everyone has to go through that to start before they can apply for the second workshop. So if people are interested in the real estate workshop, feel free. They can, I'm sure. Here's the thing: at that real estate workshop, I go through any and everything in my portfolio. I go through as many deals as you guys want that I've done. I show you the specifics. I share with you the magic sentence that's made me millions of dollars in real estate, and how to navigate a deal, how to negotiate, where to look for properties, how to make the offer, how to know if it's a good deal or not, how to close the deal, how to refinance it, where to find lenders. everything soup to nuts so that every single year on autopilot, you can be getting at least $1 million in your pocket, or at least or in your portfolio. Why? Because that means that you'll be a millionaire for the rest of your life when you go to refinance those properties later. So someone said 650 credit score doesn't matter, because if you do owner carry properties, they don't even look at your credit score. So Preet just says, what about school loan debt? My debt to income ratio is shot. Yeah, that's why I wouldn't go to a traditional lender. I would go to like a real estate workshop. I would go to like this real estate workshop. If you want to buy real estate, I would encourage you to come to the real estate workshop, because we're going to be doing it without banks. I'm going to show people how to get at least $1 million of real estate without banks, regardless of credit score, regardless of income, etc. You guys, you have to remember, real estate is how some of the world's millionaires are made. And it's one of the easiest magic piggy banks that you can cash flow arbitrage. Aaron just said virtual option for the workshop or live only. You can do virtual if you want. Yeah, it's the same price. It's no different. If you want to do virtual, you're welcome to do that, or live, either way. Tim, got to run. Thanks. Yep. Yeah. Thanks, Tim. What other questions do you guys have for me? I don't know how much time we have, Matthew, but I'll pause and happy to answer questions, or turn it over to you as well.
Yeah, no, we've got about 5 more minutes, and I was going to just reference everyone that, like, my mind is already blown, and I'm sure yours is. We're going to have a replay of this, so check your email. I'll post it online, because there's just some concepts in here. I know that, like, you just got to go over them a couple of times to really, really dial down. I can speak personally in my own life from implementing similar things that, you know, he's right. This is your mini ATM, this piggy bank in each of these areas, and you're able to borrow against. And it's just, it's one of those things you wish you would have learned in school, certainly. And you realize why the rich get richer. And in my personal opinion, the way that I see the economy going, based on how not just the leaders in our country and every other country are doing certain things, I believe that if you don't acquire assets now and you do this strategy, there may come a time in a very near future where it's going to be almost impossible for the average middle-class family to acquire these assets. And I believe that's intentional. So, you know, every morning I wake up with a sense of urgency in the pit of my stomach to where, all right, got to find more deals, got to help more people, got to get this cycle going much faster. So I hope that this really made sense for you today.
Well, I always say, look, you either ride the tsunami or you get swallowed by it. You have two. There is no middle ground, because even though inflation's at 8%, assets are going up 20 to 30%, because wealthy people understand this. So the gap gets wider faster. So you have to be on the front of that wave, of that tsunami. So and let me say this, guys. I'm not trying to oversell this, because or this isn't like a get rich quick or anything, obviously, from what I've said. So let me just say this. This is going to take time. I am going to have you do some things that are going to be mentally painful. This is going to take effort. It is going to take learning. It's going to take brain hurt. I'm not like dismissing that. I agree. And it sucks. But here's the thing. If you do that, the other side of that is absolutely amazing and gorgeous and beautiful. And it's a whole new world on the other side. So, like, yes, I'm not gonna say, like, yeah, going to the gym, it is gonna be sore. You are gonna be it's gonna hurt. But you know what? On the other side, it's gonna be way, way better. So again, I'm not gonna sugarcoat it, but I will help you every step of the way, do the best I can, understand these terms, understand this business. If you want to get plugged in with our community, I'm happy to help you however I can. You got to do the push-ups, but I'll try to make the push-ups as painless as possible for you.
And you also offer a retreat, the Guardians Retreat in Puerto Rico every year. Now, you cover things like real estate investing, crypto. What else do you cover at that training?
Yeah. So this last year it was business building, growth. So like we have the Guardians membership. So the Guardians membership, we have a couple different tiers, but one of the memberships is 100K. You also get a line of credit with that, but we have another membership that doesn't have a line of credit. It's 25K. And you get to go to all the intensives. You get to go to our annual retreat, where we had Gary Vaynerchuk speaking this year. We had Natasha Graziano, Dave Meltzer, Bobby and Sophia Castro, which they just did $1 billion exit on their business. So we have a whole smorgasbord of all different things: sales, business, tax reduction strategies, crypto, real estate, personal development, mindset. So yeah, the annual retreat is kind of a buffet. And then we do intensives throughout the year on real estate, crypto, and on those topics. We go deep for 2 days. throughout the year.
Nice. Any other questions, gang? There's going to be a replay up likely tomorrow of this, so just keep your eyes and ears out. And like I said, it's just a wealth of information. So any other questions before we head out?
You guys are also, I'll put that link back in there one more time. If people do want to do a map, like I said, it's $7,500. And if you don't get 10 to 30K in that first 1 hour, we'll completely refund you. So it should be well, let me say this. And we're going to map out your next 1 to 5 years from you so that you know what to be doing for the next 1 to 5 years to grow massive wealth. And I would say most people leave there with anywhere from 100K to about $10 million of long-term benefit that they're going to realize. Like I had a call the other day with this guy big in real estate, and he was leaving millions on the table that he didn't realize through cost seg and accelerated depreciation, that we just changed a few things. And for him, we got the call. I should be fair. I mean, I think I exaggerated a little bit. I think I got the call. He's like, dude, Thaddeus, I think this is going to save me probably $5 to $8 million over the next 3 to 5 years in taxes. Cause just the way he wasn't doing things.
Nice. Last chance. Any questions?
Thank you guys so much. I really appreciate it. Matt, thanks so much for having me on here. I love hanging out with you like always, man. Appreciate it. Happy to do this again or on another topic if we want. And,
yeah, you got it.
Help however we can.
I'm sure you get a lot of interest from the replay as well. I'm going to send this out, and I appreciate you, everything you're doing to help empower doctors, entrepreneurs to really live and prosper. It's a very interesting time that we live in. And I think that being in circles like what you provide is absolutely essential for continued growth. Like, Tony Robbins always says, proximity is power. So you guys are in the right place. Watch this video again. I'm telling you, you're going to get some more gems out of what Dr. Gala shared with us. So hopefully you guys have a fantastic day. And thanks again, Doc, for this amazing day. So
awesome.
See you guys soon.
Thanks, brother. All right. Thanks. Bye.
Ciao.